So Parshas Vayakel, I'm going to read the beginning. It says, it opens up, Vayakel Moshe es kol hadas bnei Yisrael, vayomer alehem. And Moshe gathered together all the Jewish people, and he said to them, Eile hadvarim asher tziva Hashem la'asos osam. These are the things that Hashem has commanded you to do. Sheishes yomim teosem malacha, 6 days work shall be done, vayom hashvi yeh lachem kodesh, and on the 7th day it will be sacred. Shabbos Shabbosin Hashem, a day of Sabbath for Hashem, day of rest. Kol ha'osavoy malacha yomos, anyone who does work on this day will be liable for capital punishment. Lo savaru eish b'chol Moshe v'sechem yom Shabbos, you shall not light a fire on Shabbos. Vayomer Moshe al kol hadas bnei Yisrael lemer, and Moshe said to all the Jewish people, Zeh hadavar asher tziva Hashem lemer, this is what Hashem has told you to do. Chumei chem truma la Hashem, take from among you truma, a donation to Hashem, etc., etc., etc. And then it goes on to talk about all the things that had to be brought to build the Mishkan, all the materials that needed to be donated for the Mishkan. What's interesting is, in the opening here, it says, and Moshe gathered the Jewish people, and he said to them, these are the things that Hashem has commanded you to do. Mentions Shabbos, by the way, which obviously we've already been commanded about previously earlier. Sorry? Mm-hmm. And then it continues and says, and Moshe told the Jewish people, this is what Hashem has commanded you, and goes on to talk about the materials that were needed to be donated for the Mishkan. So the first time it says, and Moshe gathered the people and told them and said to them, this is what Hashem has commanded you. What is it that he's saying that Hashem has commanded? Right, but he already commanded us to do that. Right, so if you have a look, a lot of the commentaries will say that what it's actually referring to is what it says a few psukim later, which is talking about the materials that needed to be donated to the Mishkan. But it's kind of hard to accept that that's what it means. Because it says, and Moshe gathered the Jewish people and told them, this is what Hashem commanded you. 6 days work shall be done, da 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 da. And Hashem spoke to the Jewish people saying, this is what Hashem has commanded you. And then talk about the materials that needed to be donated. So it doesn't make sense that Moshe would say, this is what Hashem has commanded you. This is what Hashem has commanded you. These are the things that need to be donated, right? Because in between the first statement that Hashem has commanded you as follows, and the second statement, in between the opening verse that says Hashem has commanded you as follows, and the instructions about what needed to be donated, there is a second time that it says these are the instructions that Hashem has commanded. Which means that the second time it says that, let me maybe put this on the board to make it a little easier to keep track of. So I'm going to number the verses. I'm not going to write everything out, but verse number 1.
This is for sure not a permanent marker, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not. Thank you. Thank you. Just for the record, by the way, if you ever make that mistake and use a permanent marker on a whiteboard, if you get a dry erase marker and you write over it, it usually erases, because this is basically just a marker with a solvent inside that makes it easy to wipe off. So if you use that and you go over the permanent marker, generally the solvent will get the regular marker off. I don't know about permanent marker, but regular markers for sure.
Hand sanitizer also works, by the way.
Sorry?
Hand sanitizer also works.
Oh yeah?
Mm-hmm.
Nice. Okay.
I already had experience in this.
It's good to know it does something for
How
sure.
many whiteboards have you ruined?
There's been a lot of teachers that use permanent marker.
None. I've been able to rescue them all. Good save. Moshe gathered the Jews and said, I'm paraphrasing here, and said, Hashem commands you as follows. Okay, then we have verse number 2 and 3. 6 days work shall be done. 7th day. It says Shabbos Shabbosin. There will be a day of rest. Verse number 4. Moshe told the Jews, Hashem commands you as follows. Five goes on to talk about details of materials needed for the Mishkan. Right? So we have Moshe gathers the Jews and says, Hashem commands you as follows. 6 days work shall be done, 7th day you shall rest. Moshe told the Jews, Hashem commands you as follows, and then the details of the materials needed for the Mishkan. Which means that this statement, Moshe gathered the Jews and said, Hashem commands you as follows, can't be talking about the details of what's needed for the Mishkan, because what's as follows? It's just, if it's not this, and it's this, then it doesn't make sense. Moshe gathered the Jews and said, Hashem commands you as follows. Hashem commands you as follows. If it says Hashem commands you as follows here in verse 1, and then verse 4 again says Hashem commands you as follows, that means there must be some sort of commandment in between that Moshe is telling the Jewish people that Hashem commands you as follows. But the only thing we see here is something that we already know. They've already been commanded to keep Shabbos. So what is the as follows that verse 1 is talking about? When Pasuk Aleph says Hashem commands you as follows, what is it that he commands them? What follows that Hashem is commanding them presently at this time that they haven't already been commanded about? Another thing that's interesting and worth noting here, it doesn't say on the 7th day it will be Shabbos, on the 7th day you shall rest. It says on the 7th day, Shabbos Shabbosin. It repeats the word Shabbos. Now, we could say, and this is more or less the case in a sense, it's a repetition, it's let's say a rhetorical tool. It's used for emphasis. You repeat something in writing sometimes to add emphasis. The question then becomes, why the emphasis? Right? If you're writing, let's say, and I think this is probably the place where you'll see it the most, would be in poetry. Or when someone's writing poetry and they'll use some sort of rhetorical device, let's say it's a repetition, something like that, to, well, quote unquote, quote, repeat the line for emphasis, to make a point stronger. Why? I mean, if you're writing a poem, and I give you a hint, don't repeat every line. Don't say everything twice. Right? If you repeat everything, effectively, well, I can't say you've repeated nothing because you've repeated everything, but you've emphasized nothing. Right? The point of emphasis is, the point of repeating for emphasis is that when there's something that you want to draw attention to and for that to be the focus, you repeat it to emphasize it, to draw focus, to draw attention, to make the point, to draw the reader or listener's focus here and let them know this is something that you want to be taking note of, to make it particularly impactful. If you repeat every line twice, maybe it's a style of writing, but nothing has any more impact than anything else. Right? So if this word is being repeated, and this is not a question, well, why does it repeat? It doesn't make any sense. That's not the question. It makes sense to write like that, but the question is, why is this being repeated? Of all the words and all the places right here, it says Shabbos Shabbosin. A rest of rests. And particularly since we don't even know what exactly it is that these two verses are even telling us, because doesn't seem to be anything new here. Until we pay attention to the words, what do we say here? It doesn't say, when it comes to, when Hashem told us about the obligation of Shabbos, it tells us 6 days of the week you work, on the seventh day you shall rest, you rest, and we learn about how to rest, and Shabbos, the laws of Shabbos, resting, commemorating the 6 days of creation and Hashem's day of rest, etc. It doesn't say that here. It's more or less paraphrased, but there are some words here that I did not paraphrase, and that is these words here. Particularly work shall be done. So the Hebrew word, if you would say, Sheishes Yomim ta'aseh malacha, ta'aseh means you will do. It doesn't say that, it says te'aseh malacha. It will be done. What's the difference? If you do work, work is done. If you don't do work, work is not done. Kind of. One of the things that people who, let's say someone is a really talented creative artist, maybe they paint, they do something creative, people start to tell them, your work is amazing, you should sell it, make a living off your work, off what you enjoy, and they start posting to Instagram, and then the following grows, and then they start letting people know that anything I post here is available for sale, you want to buy it, and everything they make sells out super quickly, and then they produce more art, and then people purchase it, people express an interest, they make a sale, and they pack up the artwork, and they ship it off and keep a record of the sale and all of these things. There's a lot of work that goes into fulfilling orders, tracking orders, record keeping, bookkeeping, etc. All of these things. And as their business picks up and they're selling more and more artwork, they all of a sudden find themselves producing less and less artwork because more and more of their time is going into packaging orders, shipping orders, fulfilling, bookkeeping, record keeping, all of these things. And then it gets to a point where maybe out of, let's say they're working 40 hours a week and they're spending 10 hours a week producing art, or 20 hours a week producing art, and 20 or 30 hours a week on all the other stuff, taking care of everything. And, things are going well and decently, and they think to themselves, well, it's just, if only I could make more art. But how am I going to make more art? Make more art. First of all, I'd rather spend my time doing art. Second of all, make more art, sell more art, make more money. But my hands are full. I've only got so many hours in a week. What do I do? And at that point, either a lot of people get stuck there and that's where they stay. Right? The difference between someone who stays there and kind of ekes out a living and makes it work versus the person who really succeeds at a much larger scale, one of the biggest factors that's going to distinguish between them is the person who either realizes themselves or someone points out to them this idea and then they actually implement it, which is, can anyone else produce your art? No. Could someone else package orders and ship them out? Yes. Could someone else do bookkeeping? Yes. So the bookkeeping needs to be done. Packaging orders needs to be done. Shipping orders needs to be done. If you want to get money, you have to sell, you have to ship, you have to fulfill, you have to keep records and all of these things. That's true. But you don't have to do it necessarily. So if you can hire someone to take over doing those things, and it can be a hard transition to make because maybe the person isn't selling enough that they can afford to hire someone, but if they don't hire someone, they're never going to make more. And, figuring that out can be a thing. But the point is, if the person can work out how to make their way through that and get someone who can package and ship their orders and someone to take care of other people or a person or other people to take care of everything else that's not producing the art that only they can produce. Now, if they're producing art for 40 hours a week instead of 10, they're producing 4 times as much art. Everything else gets taken care of. They can sell 4 times as much art, and that's the main thing that's producing the revenue. And so they're going to be making a lot more money, and they're going to be spending their whole week doing the thing that they want to do. Well, how can you, if you want to run a business and someone else asks them, it's like, how much time during the week do you actually get to produce art? And maybe they work more. Maybe they have time and, they don't have any other major commitments. And maybe they spend 70 hours a week doing art, working on that. And someone says, how many hours a week do you get to spend on actually producing art? And they're like, well, 70 hours usually. And they're like, but you have a business. Well, you have to, when do you pack the orders and ship them and take care of this and take care of all these other secondary things that need to be done? And they said, I don't do them. We'll say, well, how could you have a business if those things don't get done? So I never said they don't get done. I said, I don't do them. Someone else does them. Do they need to be done? Yes, they need to be done. Do I need to be doing them with my hands? No, who says? Why should I need to be doing them with my hands? Right, and that's the thing, that if a person can figure out how to get that to happen, to take anything that doesn't have to be them, because this person's passion and creativity and mind and heart and soul are what produces this artwork. They have to do it. All the other things need to be done, but it doesn't have to be done by them. And the more the greater the extent to which they can get anything that doesn't need to be done by them to be, handed off to someone else, delegated to someone else, the more of their time and energy, physical energy, mental energy, emotional energy, passion, all of these things, they're going to be able to put into producing the art. Right? So the fact that something gets done doesn't necessarily mean you do it. You did does not necessarily equal the other way around. It was done doesn't necessarily equal you did it. And we're going to dig a little deeper into here and see what this pasuk here is telling us. And what it's telling us in this wording, 6 days work shall be done, is something that hasn't been told before. That's what this is telling us, and it's going to tie into this as well. And this is such a profoundly important and really, honestly, truly, literally life-changing message when it's implemented properly. When it says here, it doesn't say 6 days you shall work. It says 6 days work shall be done. Now, we're going to get a little bit more, I'm not sure what exactly the right word is. We're not talking about it here as literally as we were talking about when you actually delegate work out to someone else. Because we're talking about the person doing the work. If they're resting on the seventh day, it means that they weren't resting the other 6 days also. It doesn't say 7 days you shall rest. It says 6 days work shall be done. On the seventh day you shall rest. Which means that the you who is being told to rest on the seventh day is involved in the process of the work being done. So what does it mean, the work shall be done? And it specifically, intentionally says the work shall be done, not you shall do the work. But if we're talking to the person who's doing the work, we're talking to the person in second person who's doing the work, but saying specifically, intentionally, not you will do the work, but the work will be done. So what does that mean? And what it boils down to is, think, right, for a minute, imagine this artist. Imagine, visualize, right? Imagine you're walking in to them, they're in their studio, let's say it's a painter, right? And they have paints and brushes out and they've, got a smock on or just whatever they work and they get paint all over it. They're busy working and they've been painting now for 6 hours straight. You catch them sometime in the afternoon. And this is what they're working on the whole day today. They're painting. Imagine the expression you're likely to see on their face, the posture, the picture you're going to see, not of the whole room, but of the person. If you walk in from the side quietly and they don't see you, think about what you're going to see in them as a person, versus if you catch the same person on a different day of the week when they're packaging and shipping orders and putting things into their bookkeeping software and taking care of whatever else they need to take care of, as an artist who really just wants to be or would love to be painting the whole day every day, you're probably going to see two very different people. Right? When this person who is a painter at heart a creative artist at heart, and they are engaged in the process of creating, they're going to be engrossed. It's probably not going to be that hard to sneak up on them, because this is where their heart and soul is at. Their heart and soul, their mind, their focus, their attention, every part of them is completely engaged by what they're doing, because this is what's valuable to them. This is where their passion lies. This is what they want to be doing. This is almost who they are. And that same person who would just be painting all day, every day, if they could, maybe they wish they didn't even have to eat or sleep. They could just paint 24/7, 24/6. When a person like that is busy, wrapping paintings up and packaging them and then putting them in boxes and printing shipping labels and looking up addresses on Google or whatever, or a person placed an order, they probably gave them the address, but, and then taking the boxes and schlepping them down and getting them out to the post office or arranging a pickup, and then going and recording everything in some software so that their books are in order. Do you think that person's going to be deeply engrossed in bookkeeping and completely invested and present and engaged by taking paintings down to the post office? Unlikely. More likely that person is either thinking about their artwork while they're doing this kind of absentmindedly, or they're doing it and thinking, oh my goodness, this is so annoying. I wish I didn't have to do it. I wish I could get back to my artwork. But they're almost certainly not going to be present and engaged and involved in all of the secondary things the same way they are when they're producing their art. There's a story of someone once, I believe, I was going to say Baal Shem Tov, something tells me maybe it's the Mizrich Magid, one of them, I'm pretty sure it was one of the two. Someone was davening in their shul, finished davening Shmoneh Esrei, and as a person says Zos Shalom, and goes the 3 steps back and 3 steps forward, the tzaddik, whoever it was, walks up to them and says, Shalom Aleichem, welcome back. And they said, I didn't go anywhere. And they're like, yes, you did. And they're like, no, I haven't traveled. I mean, I'm here. I haven't gone anywhere. And so the tzaddik asked this person, what were you thinking about while you were davening? And he says, I try to daven and concentrate. I also have to support my family, and there's a big, very busy season coming up in my industry, in my whatever, they buy and sell, and he's thinking about there's going to be a big purchasing event somewhere, and he's traveling to the market to go buy in goods that are going to last him a season or a few months or a year, whatever it was. And so while he's davening, he's got a little bit distracted. He did his best, he got distracted, and he was thinking about the market and the things that he got there in the past, and maybe he should try a new vendor this year, and maybe he can get a price, and he's kind of wandering around the market in his mind while his mouth is saying the words of Shmoneh Esrei. So the tzaddik says to him, your body was here in shul, and your lips were saying the words of davening, but you, the individual who lives in this body and who speaks with those lips, you were really at the market. That's where your mind was. That's where your consciousness was. Your brain wasn't geographically located in the market, but your mind was in the market. Your consciousness was in the market. And at the end of the day, who are we? We are our soul, we are our mind, we are our consciousness. And so he says, you just, as you did Zos Shalom and finished Shmoneh Esrei, you came back from the market. So I'm saying Shalom Aleichem. Sometimes a person might be, the most typical way, I'm just visualizing it when this would happen, is someone's maybe just sitting there. You might say they're spaced out, zoning out, whatever it is. The person might be very, very focused, just not on something that's in the room, right? And so you look at their eyes, and their eyes might be kind of glazed over, and it looks like they're just almost, barely present. And actually, it's not that they're almost barely present. They're actually not present here. Their body is geographically located here, but their mind is elsewhere. When you walk up to someone, sometimes be like, ooh, welcome back. Or absent-minded. Right? The expression absent-minded, what does it mean? It means that person's mind is absent. It's absent from the place where they are. It's absent from the thing that they're doing. And at the end of the day, our mind, our consciousness, our thoughts, that is who we are. The body is something that we inhabit. It's somewhat of an oversimplification, but our body is not us. It's our body, the body that is ours, the body that belongs to us, the body through which we engage with the world, the body in which we live. But the body isn't the person, isn't the individual is in the body. And if we're talking in terms of experience, probably the closest thing to who we are is our consciousness. When someone's absent-minded, in a sense, they're not just absent-minded, they're actually absent. The individual is absent, their body is present. That's why the Baal Shem Tov came up and said, Shalom Aleichem, welcome back. So the pasuk here is telling us, there's another verse that we have, it says, Yegia kapecha kiseichal. I'm going to use the red one just because it's working better. Yegia kapecha kiseichal ashrecha v'tov lach. Yegia means the toil. The toil of your hands when you consume it. In other words, when you live off the produce of the toil of your hands. Ashrecha, you are fortunate, v'tov lach, and good, and it is good for you. So it's telling us here very explicitly, it is a noble and fulfilling and rewarding and positive thing to produce what you need with the work of your hands. And it doesn't just say work, it says toil. But it says toil of your hands. It says toil because a person has to work hard, and we should work hard. There's nothing noble about not being a hard worker, but a person can be doing one thing with their hands. Well, let's go back to this creative artist. When that artist is painting, which part of them is holding the paintbrush or the palette knife or whatever it is that they're using to paint? It's in their hand. They're holding it in their hand with their fingers, presumably, most of the time. Would you say that the artwork came from their hand? It would be probably more correct to say that their hand is a tool that they are utilizing to produce artwork. The artwork comes from the soul, comes from the mind, comes from the heart, all of the above. That painting is not the work of their hands. Well, it is technically, but if you really want to describe it most correctly, it's a product of their heart, it's a product of their soul, it's a product of their mind, it's a product of their vision, it's a product of their imagination. But there's certainly a lot more to it than just being a product of their hands. And chances are, I would guess, if you would, comment to, someone produces like incredible, unique, beautiful, creative art, and you come to them and you say, wow, you have like amazing, well, first of all, amazing hands could be an expression as a figure of speech, in which case it will be appreciated. But if you start going on, my goodness, like, wow, like the muscles in your hand must be like so amazing. Can I see your hands? Like, wow. It's maybe kind of like what, you come to someone's house and they've just cooked the most amazing meal you've ever eaten in your life. The flavors, the textures, everything. The food is like something you've never eaten before in your life. And you ask them, and you say to them, this food is amazing. What pots do you use? You might not be invited back in a hurry, right? Or it's like, same thing I relate to this. People, and this is something that happens all the time. Maybe not as much anymore, but it's like, wow, your photos are amazing. What camera do you use? It's like, well, maybe it's a good camera here. Take the camera and see how good your photos are. The camera didn't make the photos. The photographer did. The camera is a tool that's used to do them. Pots and pans don't make good food. A good chef, someone who thinks and lives food and breathes food, is going to cook much better food in cheap garbage cookware than someone who's not really a very good cook is going to cook with a $1,000 frying pan and $1,000 worth of other utensils in a $100,000 kitchen. Better tools are can give an advantage. If you have within yourself everything that it takes to be able to benefit from them. But at the end of the day, it's not the tool that produces the outcome, it's the artist, the creator. And for this creative artist, for this painter, let's say, to them, I'm guessing that most of them probably are going to think of their hand almost as a tool that they use, and they might not particularly appreciate someone talking about how amazing their hands are in a very literal sense, where they specifically mean hands, and the hands are not a proxy for, sometimes you'll say, well, this person has amazing hands. What you mean is they're amazingly capable. Right, but if you come to this painter and you say, wow, like I can't even imagine what goes on in your head, your vision, your imagination are just amazing, incredible, that's going to hit that's going to hit home. That person's going to appreciate that, right? Because that's where it comes from. When that same exact person is packaging orders and schlepping things down to the post office, are they doing the work? Yeah. Are they doing it with their mind and their heart and their soul and their imagination and their vision and their passion? No. The only thing that's involved there is their hands. They're doing it with their hands. Their mind, their heart, their soul, their passion, their excitement are somewhere else, probably in the studio. And so the Pasuk says, the toil of your hands, from the toil of your hands you shall consume. We absolutely do need to be responsible. We need to behave in a way that's responsible and do what's necessary in order to fulfill to live up to and satisfy our responsibilities. If that means getting a job, whatever it is, producing art, cleaning floors, it doesn't make a difference. It does make a difference, but in terms of if the occupation, the job, satisfies the responsibilities, does the job. The Pasuk's telling us, though, here, when will you be fortunate and it will be good for you? If the work that you do to satisfy your responsibilities, you do with your hands. The moment that the person wakes up in the morning and the thing that's on their mind and the thing that's on their heart is work, and when they go to sleep at night, they lie down, they close their eyes, they relax, the thing that they're thinking about, the thing that's on their mind is their work, that's not so ashrecha anymore. That's not fortunate. Because the work needs to be done, but it should be done with our hands, right? That painter is never going to go to sleep. If that painter goes to sleep at night, if she goes to bed, lies down and taking paintings to the post office is on her mind, it's only because she's thinking, oh my goodness, I have to take more stuff to the post office. I wish I could be painting. But she's not very unlikely to be like dreaming about taking things to the post office. She's going to be dreaming about painting. Does she take the packages to the post office? Yeah, until she outsources it. But even when she's doing it herself, it's almost like she's outsourced it. She's outsourced it to her hands. Hands, you take care of this. My mind is going elsewhere. My mind's going back to the studio. The mind has outsourced it to the hands. Just like the artist should ideally outsource that work to a different person. But if they have to do it themselves, at least their mind and their heart and their soul are going to outsource it to their hands. And that's what it's telling us here, the toil of your hands. If you work and you work hard and you're diligent and responsible and serious, but you're doing it with your hands, where is your head at? Where is your heart at? Where is your soul at? Why you're here, what this all means, what's the purpose of existence? Why did I get out of bed this morning? Why was it necessary, worthwhile, valuable for me to get out of bed this morning? Why did the Creator produce me with the exact combination of genes and strengths and weaknesses and gifts and challenges that I have? There's a reason. That's what should be on our mind. How can we make the most of that? How can we make the maximum contribution and become a part of infinity by living true to infinity, the infinity of the Creator? That's what should be on our mind. Now, to be clear, I'm going to come back to your question in a second. But to be clear, this doesn't mean that we can't use our minds for work, obviously. Right? If a person gets paid to pick apples, yeah, you can pick apples and your mind can be elsewhere. If you can pick the apples at a rate that justifies what you get paid and it's, you're fulfilling your obligation, you're good. What if a person's job is something that involves their mind, which is becoming a larger and larger and larger, segment of the population as we speak? then you have to use your mind. But even with our minds, a person can be using their mind to solve a problem, to produce an outcome, to do something that they're supposed to be doing. But even the same way that we have a soul and a body, we have a mind and a heart, and we have hands and feet, our mind itself also, in a sense, has hands and feet and a mind, right? There's the inner and outer layers of the mind. And the question is our whole, heart and soul, is the soul of our mind invested in our work? Or are we using our mind as much as we're supposed to and need to because we have an agreement and we have to do our job as effectively as we can? And if that means using our mind. But the difference is going to be when you go home, what's on your mind? When you leave work and you get in your car, and then when you get home and when you go for a run and when you get into bed at night, when you wake up in the morning, is work the thing that's on your mind? Or is who you are and why you're here, is that what's on your mind? Because if that's what's on your mind, that means that the hands and feet of your mind are involved in your work, which is the way it's supposed to be if you have to use your mind at work. But the soul of your mind isn't. The soul of your mind is still, even though at work, what you experience is your mind being engaged by work, but it's the hands and feet of your mind. The heart and soul of your mind still is with why we're here. What is this all about? Question?
I think you answered it, but it was basically like whenever it comes to Hinoch, or if like our job, comes from spiritual source, like if we're, involved in that way, or like let's say like a therapist whose like whole life is devoted to like helping people heal or find balance or shalom bias or whatever, like if they're involved in toiling in that, like with their mind, and like, when they wake up in the morning they're thinking about their patients or doctor or something like that, like is that valid to their service with Hashem also?
Yeah, so I was thinking earlier about addressing that, and I guess I just, went with the flow and didn't come back to it. But if a person's work is synonymous with or part and parcel of the things that they should be thinking about when they go to sleep or when they wake up, then there is no contradiction. Right? Now, the things that our mind should be occupied with, what I talked about are, let's say, the fundamentals and the foundation. But if a person, goes to sleep at night thinking, how am I going to help someone tomorrow? How am I going to help solve this problem for this person? How am I going to, bring this person closer to Torah and mitzvahs? How am I going to help this person feel better? How am I going to make this person's quality of life better? How am I going to help this person get healed from an illness? Those are all things that should be on our mind. So when it comes to those things, it is very different. If a person's occupation is in things that should be on their mind, then there's nothing wrong with it being on their mind. That being said, the one thing that I would add, I wouldn't call it a caveat, but something that's important to be aware of and to keep in mind is, even when involved in the right things, it's very easy to get caught up because of how busy life is, and we all are, and the rate at things which move, and we're all human. It's easy to get caught up in the hands and feet of that work and forget about the soul of the work. Right? That can happen with any noble pursuit, any good thing. And even though the hands and feet are involved in something positive, if the soul of it gets forgotten, it is possible for even something like that to lead slowly, off the path that it belongs on and to end up going somewhere negative. And even for someone who's involved in those things, I would say it's still very important, to check in, to, let's say, daven every day and make sure that davening, or the person who is involved in chinuch or shlichus or something like that, they spend their time doing things they should be doing. They have a good excuse for being distracted by that during davening, but it's still not the right thing, right? Because the davening, the connecting, the plugging in at the end of the day is the soul of those things that we're doing. And we still do need to connect to that and to plug into that, every day, and to make that time. And even for a person like that, ideally, probably the thing that's on their mind when they go to bed or when they wake up, in a perfect world, should still be at the more fundamental level, which is, why are we here? Thinking about Hashem. What's our relationship with Hashem? What's our role in this big picture of Hashem, etc.? That being said, I don't think anyone could say that, waking up in the morning and what's on your mind is helping someone. I don't think there's any way to spin that as negative. But positive doesn't necessarily equal ideal.
So what is the ideal?
The ideal is, regardless of what it is that we're involved in, we wake up in the morning, we say, Moida ani lefanecha melech chai v'kayam. You know, we acknowledge and thank Hashem for bringing us here, for giving us an existence that has a purpose and that has meaning. And that purpose and meaning are to integrate the divinity, the infinity of Hashem into the world through everything we do in our life, through our walking and our eating and our everything, and our toiling with our hands, picking apples, whatever it is. And davening, connecting, plugging in, and then going about doing what we're doing. And the person who is involved in things that are more, let's say, soul-oriented or more obviously closer to purpose and meaning, the balance of the extent to which they want to distinguish between their hands and their heart is probably not the same. But it's important for everyone to have those foundations. And ideally, that person also should be lying down at night and thinking not just about what they're doing, but why they're doing it. Right? There could be doctors who are very capable and help a lot of people who maybe some of them, you know, there could be a doctor who's an amazingly capable, talented doctor and helps people feel better in a way that maybe no other doctor can. And if you know enough about that doctor, you might still look at them and be like, well, that is not a nice person. He's not a good person. Now, what do you mean not a good person? This person saves lives all day, every day. It's like, yes, they do. Maybe they do it because they love it. Maybe they do because it's their passion or whatever it is. And you can't take away from the fact that that is objectively good. But it doesn't necessarily mean you're going to respect them as a person. And even if that doctor is the most capable and the most talented, if they're a person who, let's say, right now, obviously I'm illustrating something extreme to make the point. Let's say the doctor doesn't actually care about their patients at all. Hypothetically, someone could be a high-functioning sociopath who's an incredibly talented doctor who literally, the only reason they care about doing the best, producing the best outcome for their patients is because that's what benefits them, because of their ego, because of their reputation, because of their bank account, whatever it is. And a person might be the doctor that's helping the most people, the most substantially in the world, and actually literally not care about the patients. So going to a doctor like that, there'll be a time and a place to say, look, that doctor's the most capable and it's a difficult thing that needs to be done and no one else can do it as well as them. There's a time and place maybe to do that, but it's probably also something the person's going to weigh up because, you know, that there's always that risk. Maybe that doctor just decides in the middle of a procedure, you know what? Heck, I made enough money. I don't need to do this anymore. And just walk, whatever. You know, obviously, again, I'm not saying this is very realistic or likely. It's extreme, but a person can be involved in good things, and if it's not for the right reasons, there's a lot of risk there. Now, coming back to something that's a bit more realistic and more closer to what you're asking, we're not talking about someone who's a high-functioning sociopath who doesn't care and they just do it for their money or their ego or their reputation, mostly. Right? We're talking about people who do mean well and are doing it for the right reasons, but we're also human, and if we lose track, anybody can veer. And the less connected and plugged in mentally, emotionally, consciously we are to the purpose and to the meaning and to the foundation of it all, the greater the risk becomes that, you know, who knows? Right? So even for the person who's involved in those things, it's very, very important. I would say maybe it's a little bit less urgent, but it's still very important for everyone to be connected and, you know, that the thing that's on our mind when we fall asleep and when we wake up should be the purpose and the meaning of it all. Hashem, us, the interplay, etc., rather than just the thing itself. Because just focusing on the thing without making time to connect to the foundation of it, sooner or later, probably for just about everyone, it's gonna end up less than ideal, let's say. So now coming back here, we've got to sort of bring this back together and put a bow on it. What Hashem is telling us here is not you shall keep Shabbos. Hashem already told us you shall keep Shabbos. What Hashem is telling us here is Shabbos Shabboson, you want to have that real powerful Shabbos, right? When do you use an alliteration repetition, something like that in a poem, when you want something to really hit hard, to make a point, you want it to make an impact, you want the person to feel it. Hashem, here it says Shabbos Shabbos, and this is a Shabbos that you really feel. It's a powerful, deeply fulfilling and rewarding and rejuvenating rest. Not just Shabbos, it's Shabbos Shabbos, and it's the rest of all rests. If you think realistically that you could be on your phone, 18 hours a day, worrying about work and panicking about work, and when you wake up in the mind, your meeting for the day and the business deal and your trades are on your mind and it's all you think about all day, and when you go to sleep they're still on your mind, and you fall asleep and you dream about it all night, and you wake up and you're just going again, and from the second Shabbos ends until the next Shabbos starts, your mind is just like work, business, money, whatever it is. You really think that the second you light the candles and say Lahadlik Neshel Shabbos Kodesh, all of a sudden you're just going to be like, I have a secret? The answer is no. It's not the way it works. Now, obviously, again, that was extreme to illustrate, but the Pasuk's telling us, if you want to have Shabbos Shabbos, and you want to come into Shabbos, and you want your Shabbos to be profoundly fulfilling and meaningful, and you want to really, really experience everything that Shabbos has to offer, the way to make that happen is 6 days the work shall be done. Sheishes yomim te'aseh melacha. Are you doing it with your body? Yeah. But as far as who's you, your soul, your passion, your heart, your mind, they have outsourced it to your body. And even if it's work you do with your mind, the mind of your mind, the heart of your mind has outsourced it to the hands and feet of your mind. The work's getting done. It's taken care of. Right? The person, let's say that someone who, the painter, hire someone to take care of all of that other stuff, and the person's, a klutz and they're not doing a good job and the paintings aren't arriving at the customer's places, it's like, it's not being done. It doesn't work. It needs to be done, but the greater the extent to which they can offload and outsource anything to someone who will get the job done and get it job done properly, but it's not them, the happier they're going to be. The more present and engaged they're going to be in what they're doing. And it's telling us here the same thing. Your heart and soul should not be engaged in your work, ideally. And even if they should be in some cases, the heart and soul of your heart and soul and of your mind should be engaged, ideally, primarily in the fundamentals of that. Why? What's it all about? Why are we doing it? What does it mean? And the actual work, it should be done, it needs to get done, but it should be outsourced to your hands and feet. It shouldn't be the thing that your heart and soul is engaged in. And when you do that, if for 6 days the work is done, your mind and heart and soul outsource it to your hands and feet, then when the 7th day comes, Shabbos Shabboson, you're going to have that profoundly fulfilling and rewarding and impactful Shabbos, because you're almost kind of there already, right? Your mind is present where it's supposed to be. Your heart is present where it belongs the whole week. And Shabbos is just an environment that allows that to go to a whole new level. Imagine someone who's just scuba diving, does the hundreds of hours of scuba diving, and then someone takes them to a location that just is unmatched as far as scuba diving. They're going to go deeper than they've ever seen and see colors they've never seen. All of those things, the experience is going to be incredible. If you take someone who's never done scuba diving in their life and you take them to that location, if they even manage to do it, what are they thinking about? They're trying to focus on their breathing and their paddling and their oxygen levels, and they're thinking about all those other things. They don't really get to enjoy it because they're not prepared and ready to be fully engaged by this experience. But if you've been in something that's close to this already, you're ready to make the most of this and really get out of it everything that it has to offer. And that's this. If 6 days the work is done, and your whole week is almost kind of Shabbos-like, then when Shabbos comes, you're going to have Shabbos Shabbos, and you're going to have the rest of all rests. Have a good week. Make sure the work gets done.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.